It's that time of year again, people. It's time for the GMTK Game Jam 2024, a 4-day-long competition to create a game from scratch that fits the theme built to scale. This jam is the largest in the world, with this year featuring over 7,500 games, including one game made by us. On my team today is Snowball the Anvil on programming, 3D modelling and game design, Winter on character design and 2D art, and me, the wonderful Tsea on programming, game design and environments. Together we built a game about helping people and destroying the universe. So hold on tight and get ready as I show you how we made Orange for Scale. I hope you enjoy. Now, as I mentioned, the idea for the game had to fit around the jam's theme, and we were really hoping for a nice easy theme for this jam, like in last year's one, where it was roles reversed. So when the theme was announced as built to scale, we were a little bit stumped. Don't get me wrong, we had tons of ideas, like games about musical scales, weighing scales and the scale of objects, but nothing that really jumped out at us as something that we wanted to make. But as time ticked past, we needed to come up with something. So through a process of elimination, we were left with two ideas. A factory game, where you need to build designs that work efficiently at large scales, and a narrative minigame game, where you would complete minigames to grow larger. Now I really like the factory game, but after talking it out with Snowball, we came to the conclusion that it was too complex for us to build within the time limit. So we ended up going with the narrative minigame game, even though we didn't really have any ideas about the narrative at the time, or an explanation as to why you were expanding. But that's an issue for later us. As for current us, it's time to hit the sack and get ready for... Okay, so having slept on the idea, we came back the next day and solidified most of what you'll be doing in the game. So here's our current game plan. The player, you, wants to get bigger. And so in order to do that, you go out into your local village that you live in to assist the local villagers, in return for a special something that increases your size. You assist the villagers by completing 3 different minigames that get harder as you play them. So now with our idea blocked out, we started working on the first of the 3 minigames, which we called the stacking minigame. The backstory to this minigame is that you agreed to help the local shouty librarian stack their new supply of books in return for them scaling up your legs. So with that in mind, I started off by creating the player movement, which is just a jump in this case, but I made sure to give the player a variable jump height, which means that the longer you hold down the jump button, the higher you jump. This just means that the jumping feels better and allows the player to be more accurate, most of the time. Whilst I was doing that, Snowball worked on making the blocks slide in from either side, and also added in the lose condition, so if the tower falls, or you miss a block, you have to restart. The final thing we did was added the win condition, before heading off to lunch for a well-earned snack. And after fulfilling lunch, we got back to work by starting on the second minigame. This minigame is all about smashing stuff, so it's appropriately called the smashing minigame. The story behind it is that the local baker is preparing his signature dish, but he requires a lot of eggs to be smashed, which he asks you to help with. And of course, you being the awfully kind person you are, you agreed to help. We started off by making the fist smash down onto the conveyor belt when you press the Q and the E keys, and then moved on to adding in the eggs that you would be smashing. We then added in the win and lose conditions, before finally getting distracted by some friends and spending the rest of the day at the cinema watching Despicable Me 4. Wait, hold on. That doesn't sound right. You're saying that you're being really productive, making great progress, and then you just stopped and went out for the rest of the day? Correctamundo. Did you at least have fun? Heck yeah, I had fun, and I slept like a log that night too. All ready for... After a relaxing nap, we started off day 2 by making some small tweaks to the jumping minigame to make it a little bit easier to complete, along with finishing up some things that we didn't get to do with the second minigame on day 1. This was all meant to be in preparation for getting the third minigame started, but before we did that, I decided that I was tired of looking at a bunch of boxes and rectangles. The game needed some art. And as I mentioned earlier, this time we have a dedicated artist for the jam, Winter. So after no brief and a surprisingly short amount of time, Winter whipped up some art assets that took the player from being a boring old cube to being this cute little cat thing, with oddly muscular legs. And after animating the sprite and making the background look a little bit nicer, we now had a fully functional minigame that not only played the part, but that looked the part too. It's not completely done yet, but it's certainly better than it was. And whilst Winter and I were doing all of this, Snowball had got started on the third minigame, the sorting minigame. Here's the rundown. The local post office has had a bit of a catastrophe and have dropped all their packages on the floor, and so, in return for an expanded mind, you are tasked with helping sort out all the oddly shaped packages into their respective boxes, similar to the packing game in Satisfactory, but this one doesn't have the player working towards a high score. Now, I'm sure you'd all love for me to tell you how this minigame works, and believe me, I'm dying to tell you. But unfortunately, Snowball programmed the systems for these games using his mega IQ, so I have no idea how any of them function. But with all the minigames completed, all we now had to do was make some levels. But we decided to leave that for tomorrow, as again, we got distracted by friends and spent the rest of the day doing other stuff. You know, I'm starting to see a pattern here. I mean, I really think... Day 3. Today we made the level select screen. Now, typically these are a fairly boring menu, so for this game we wanted to spice it up and try something different. And Snowball, who had recently purchased the game Thank Goodness You're Here on Steam, wanted a physical town instead of a menu where each house was a different minigame. So hearing this, I started off by creating a static screen where you would click on each house to go to each level. But Snowball, who had recently purchased the game Thank Goodness You're Here, wanted to be able to walk around the town and interact with different buildings. So we pivoted and created just that. Starting off, we added some movement for the player, which I ripped from our main project, and then added in some houses that Snowball had created in Blender, all topped off with a nice spacey skybox and ta-da! A level select screen that didn't fully work. But hey ho, there were more important things to work on, like the dialogue system, which surprisingly only took me about an hour to make, which is absolutely mental, seeing as the first time I ever made one of these, it took me a week, and I followed a tutorial for the entire thing, meaning I didn't really know how it worked. I guess I have learned something in the last year and a half. Anyway, I think you can guess what we ended up doing for the rest of that day, so it's time to move on to the final day. We have a problem. It's the final day and we still don't have a bunch of stuff done. We still have to figure out what the story is, make all the dialogue for the game, and actually give it a name, and do a ton of other small jobs. So let's start off with the story. Over the week we had been slowly piecing this all together, so by the time that we got to the final day, all we had left to do was to figure out the ending. And after a little bit of time, we finally came up with an idea. So here's the story. You're a normal student attending school, when one day at lunch, a bully tells you that you're too small to sit at a table. Annoyed by this, you travel into town to assist the villagers in return for a special banana that will scale a part of your body. And after helping everyone out, you return to school significantly scaled up to confront the bully. And after confronting the bully, you expand to the size of a moon where you then consume the entire universe. Obviously. And with our totally normal and not ridiculous story sorted out, we decided to get working on the ending. Now, remember the beginning of the video where I told you there were only going to be 3 minigames? Well, I lied, there are 4. The final minigame in the game is called the expansion minigame, and the title pretty much sums up what you do. You expand and devour the universe. Okay, so with that done, we were almost there. The next thing we needed to do was name the game. Now, Snowball proposed the name Orange for Scale earlier in the week, it being a parody of Banana for Scale, but I wasn't a huge fan of it as I didn't think people would get the reference. So I kept looking for a name. With the deadline looming ever closer, we decided that having a name for the game is better than not having a name. So we decided to go with Orange for Scale for the name, and Snowball made this funky thumbnail art for the itch page. Anyway, with the game now having a name, the final minigame being completed, and a few hours left, there are only a few things left to do, such as lighting the levels, making level transitions work properly, adding a ton of art from Winter, adding a ton of art from Snowball, stopping the player from falling off the side of the map, writing all the dialogue to fit in with the story, fixing a couple of other bugs, doing very little playtesting, making a title and end screen, adding in some sound effects, fixing more bugs, and finally building the game. Whew. And after all of that was done, all we had to do was create an itch page, upload the game, test the game to make sure it works, which worked first try by the way, publish the game, ship Snowball back home, remake the itch page so it actually looks good using CSS and some funky art, and then finally submit the game 2 hours early to the jam. Whew. Well, I think that went fairly well. I wonder what other people think. In the days after the jam, I spent most of my time playing through other people's games and giving them all ratings. But I also spent a lot of time reflecting over what we had made, and also reflecting over the issues that the game had. The main one being audio. In the game, there are 3 sound effects and 1 song, and the song wasn't even made during the jam, and I'm so annoyed that I didn't get to make more sound effects, or get more of a chance to polish the game. There are also a lot of small things, like the level select screen, especially when it came to the camera transitions and directing the player around. Some small things also didn't work all the time for whatever reason, probably because they ran at the last second. And overall, the game could have done with a lot more polish. But apart from that, I'm incredibly proud of what we managed to create, especially when comparing it to our last jam submission, where everything was just grey boxes and a few 3D models made by Snowball. It was also great to see all of the comments that people left on the itch page, and from many of them, people really seemed to enjoy the comedy and the jokes, which is the main thing of the game, so we're all thrilled that we managed to achieve that. So thank you to everyone who left a comment and rated our game. And speaking of rating our game, it's time to look at... Okay, so this jam is ranked in 3 categories, which then determines your overall position. And those 3 categories are style, creativity, and enjoyment. Starting from our worst category, and I promise this isn't bad as it sounds, we ranked 2,497th in enjoyment, in creativity we placed 2,096th, and in style we ranked 1,945th, leaving us with an overall placement of 2,112th. Now, I know that probably sounds bad, but considering that there were 7,500 games in this jam, I think we did pretty well. I mean, last year we came 5,287th, which means this year we did 50.75% better, which I'm told by Snowball is a multiplicative jump of 2.82, which I'm fairly certain means it was quite an improvement, and I think we did fairly well. And that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my teammates Snowball and Winter for helping me make this game. Make sure to show them some love down in the comments, as this game really wouldn't have been possible without them. And if you want to play the game, then there's a link in the description to the itch page, along with a bunch of other links to the places that I hang out. So if you decide to click on them, I'll see you there. Anyway, thanks again for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye!